And we're live. No countdown again, guys. KD, this is number 2 for no countdown. All right, so welcome to another episode of Drinks and Dogs. Again, you have my monotone self, Mike Jones for Primal Canine, essentially the main co-host of the show, and the person that helps carry on with the show when I'm going like this and continuously monotone. KD Matthews, sir. As you can tell, he's holding coffee today, and his eyes are bloodshot, so he's a little bit tired.
Yeah, this is like no alcohol tonight, folks. This is just straight caffeine because I didn't have time to go to the Wawa and get a bang.
The Wawa, we got to talk about the Wawa again because I seen like Jocko's post about it all the time, and I was like, we don't have those over here. That's got to be something. Well, I gotta introduce our special guest. We have our special guest, Dustin Wynn, North County Dog Training in San Diego. How's it going, sir?
Good. Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Oh, I got to go here. Boom. All right. So before I get onto some of like the topics, what the fuck is Wawa, and was that only over on the East Coast?
Man, that's East Coast.
Wawa is the greatest gas station ever made.
It's like a department store of gas stations.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can get food 24 hours a day. And I don't mean like the taquitos in the glass thing. I mean, like they make sandwiches, subs, cheesesteaks, you name it.
Yeah.
So it's like because Erin, obviously like Erin, my fiance, like she lived in Minnesota, and I went down to Winona, Minnesota, where she's like her family's from, and they have, I don't know if they're called quick stops or I forgot what they're called, but what are they called?
Quick Trip.
Quick Trip. Yeah, Dustin. But like
from quick trips.
Yeah, so like her brother, like we're driving down, they're like, oh yeah, it's whatever, $5 steaks or some shit like that at the Quick Trip. And then like I'm like, oh, that's great. And they're like, no, it's like this, they have like good food there. I'm like, it's a gas station. Like that's how shit is over here. It's like they have, full blown like meals and stuff in there, which is crazy.
What about Sheets?
Sheets?
We don't have Sheets in Florida.
Oh man,
I've heard about it. I've heard about it.
It's just like a Wawa. I think it rivals, if not, it may be a little better than Wawa. And that's a bold statement.
Ooh. So in December, well, actually, I might be going to Florida in July for a seminar I'm doing. I might be doing at Central Coast Canine. I'll be over there. Katie, if you're around.
Where's that?
I don't know. In Central Florida? I'm assuming Central. I don't know, man.
He's got jokes tonight, folks. Oh boy!
I just got out of the shower, just got done working dogs, so I have a little bit of energy. There. I'll have to check out the Wawa. Check out the Wawa in Central Florida.
There you go.
Awesome, man. All right, so Dustin, let's talk a little bit, man. So who is Dustin Wynn? Well, give us the background and everything.
Man, you want the quick, the down and dirty? You want the lengthy one?
Dirty. Doesn't matter the kind. You want dirty.
Dirty. So I grew up in Minnesota. I came out to California, joined the Marine Corps. I spent about 4 years in the Marine Corps. Did some contracting with some security companies overseas in Baghdad. Left Baghdad, came back, did some security work or contracting with NSW. And now I'm with MARSOC. I'm one of their instructor trainers for the canine program with MARSOC now.
Awesome. And then for most people who probably don't understand the abbreviation with MARSOC, just give a little rundown with that as far as the canine training and everything like that.
Yeah, that's it's Marine Corps Special Operations. So what we run there are multi-purpose canines, or what you would coin as a multi-purpose canine, right? It's a tracking capability, apprehension capability, and explosive detection capability. So that all into one. And then what we do is we help train the dog. We help train the handler to handle that dog, and then integrate that dog team into the actual special operations team. And then they go forth and operations overseas in various places around the world.
Is that what you did with NSW?
Yeah, that was exactly the same thing. Only there, I was a contractor with them. Yeah, it was exactly the same.
The applications that the dogs are being used in similar, or were there within what you're able to share?
Yeah, I would say it's similar. I mean, obviously one program can focus heavy on explosive detection or bite, but I felt like it was a well versed or a well balanced capabilities, all the varying we say disciplines within the dog, and we were able to. I think with Marsoc, we've done heavy water, right? A lot of swimming, a lot of amphibious inserts, jumping out of helicopters into water with dogs, things that not a lot of people did before we started doing it. So I feel like we kind of were the front runners developing an amphibious, a true amphibious capability with a dog, which is really cool when you think about 2,000 meters open water with a dog. That dog swimming right next to you. It's pretty awesome to see when that dog fully develops into that.
Nice. And you notice the difference too when you're dealing for like government, or when you work government to basically contracting as well, as far as like what the dog's capabilities and limitations that you guys are basically held to or constrained to within training.
Yeah, I think ROEs, all the rules of engagement dictate kind of how you train that dog and the scenarios that you come up with for the guys. Early on, obviously, I say early on in the war, ROEs were few and far between on really what you could do. You just had to make sure you saved lives. That's what it was. I think as time went on, ROEs increased, and you were a lot of times you became kind of handcuffed. You had to react and not be reactive. So it was more of a defensive thing, and then you would use the dog when you needed to. And that's kind of where it's gotten to. There's still, obviously, there's always a time for direct action kind of stuff, but right now it's more of a things have calmed down a little bit. So it's more of a explosive detection capability. Raids and that kind of stuff are few and far between.
Yeah. I've noticed that's kind of calmed down just a little.
Yep. It has. I don't think. Obviously, it's a roller coaster ride. It's up and it's down. You never know what's going to happen around the corner. So to stop training that way would be a deficiency to the handlers, to the dogs, to the teams, that kind of thing. So we certainly don't stop the training for it. I think it's there when we need it. If we need it, use it.
Yeah, I think that's that's one of the good parts, especially when it comes to like in that field. Because I've noticed just, years back working with that, is that when it's not necessarily a priority, it kind of falls to the side as far as what the main point, what you actually be training for, because they're getting rid of contractors to save budget, all this other stuff, and then they focus on that, and then then shit hits the fan. They're like, oh, well, why didn't you? Well, we're not training it anymore. So
and then you try to spin it up, and how long does it take to spin up? It takes a long time to spin it up, and I think there's been huge cuts in canine programs across the military, not just in the Marine Corps. So I think who knows if we ever go back to that style of warfare ever again, where it's dogs looking for IEDs in really shitty places. Who knows if we ever get back to that scale? We train for it, but who knows if it ever happens again?
Yeah. Well, a lot of it comes down. I mean, the mighty dollar bill dictates so much of what anybody does in anything involving, government stuff. So if there's a need and you have people in theater, well, budget opens up, and suddenly you can have a kennel where you can actually house 30 dogs who are not active on a team yet, but you can house them and get them ready. But suddenly, if things get quiet, budget shrinks. You can't have 30 dogs because that's money, and it's like, well, wait a minute, we'd like to have these dogs so we can train them and have them. No, we got to go now. It's
tough. It's a hard spot to be in for sure.
So let's talk about what's going on now. North County. So give us a rundown on North County, how it all came about, and what you guys are up to now.
Well, I kicked around the idea for a long time because the current position I'm in it's hard on the body. It's hard on it's hard miles. It really is when you're running and with the guys that are really honestly half my age, and I'm trying to keep up with them. It doesn't fare well in the end. So I was looking to the future and thinking, what I could do to give back to the community and not only military and law enforcement, but pets as well. I do a little of everything out here. about a year and a half ago, right before COVID really kicked off, we decided, myself and my fiance decided to start a business, a dog training business, focusing on pets at the time. And then we looked for a little bit of land to set up on and run some dogs. And that's really all it was. We were going to run some dogs, train some dogs for obedience and pets, that kind of thing. What I thought was going to be just a very mundane pet training business has now evolved into a very elaborate, a very time-consuming business. We sit on a large piece of property out in just north of San Diego, so North San Diego County. I run bite work. I do law enforcement teams. We haven't really got any military teams in here yet, but that's only that's coming soon. I'm still with MARSOC now. When I completely phase away from them, probably in January of this coming year, that opens up to all the military coming out here as well. Just with my current position, I keep that on the side. My position is what it is, and it's all pets and civilians and law enforcement teams right now. So with that, bite work, all apprehension, personal protection dogs, PSA, we run a PSA club out here as well. There's multiple structures we use: building search, area search. You figure, I mean, the property we have is hundreds and almost 2,000 acres. So in that land, you can imagine tracking is huge. I do run a tracking course out here. So, man, you name it, it's huge right now. Everybody wants dog training. And I've seen a huge increase. What I thought was going to be the demise of my business during COVID has only increased, significantly increased the amount of people that have requested training from us.
100%.
Yeah. So it's huge. I love showing off the property. You came out a few weeks back. I love showing off the property because I cannot speak it up enough. Until you come out here and see it, it speaks for itself. I can do overhead drone shots and really cool imaging. But until you get out here and see it yourself, you don't realize how awesome it is.
Katie, you'll be out there in September.
I was going to say, that was going my mouth. I'm like, well, I'll be there in September because on top of it, I got a bunch of friends and even some clients in San Diego. So that trip is going to be a whole lot more than Street League for me. So just make sure you have gin because I don't drink that brown shit.
Oh, man, I'll get you some gin.
So now, obviously, we're all we all deal within the pet world as well. Different variables in how we do our businesses. But I mean, I feel working dog stuff, doing bite work, working with different agencies, doing personal protection, doing sports stuff, doing all those things, and then going into being a part of the pet world.
Yep.
I feel, and you guys probably have different opinions on this, but I feel like it's being part of the pet world and running a successful pet business is by far more difficult, I believe, than dealing with, teams or, even when you get to some of the, SF teams or even some of the harder agencies or just stuff like that. I mean, dealing with I hate to say it, but a lady with her, little chihuahua or something like that bites them every single 2 seconds and is mauling their kids and they don't want to put it in the crate or they got them off their furniture. I didn't
training for that. I did not get any training for that. So when I opened up that business and that was what I the first thing that came to me, I had no idea how to handle it. Right. That's a lot of customer service. That's a lot of, you're just training a different style dog and it's a lot. And yeah, so there was no training that it could have ever prepared me for that.
So I tell all my guys, every single part of my training when I'm training, all my trainers. Well, you've met Lee.
Yeah.
Awesome. Have you met Matt and them too yet?
I have not.
So those guys, those are the PSA guys I have, I have a staff of 5. So I always tell people, especially because we're predominantly dealing with pets, I deal with most of the protection stuff. So I always tell them what to do is client experience. That's the most important thing to focus on because that's what you got to deal with. You got to make sure that they have you're conveying the information that you need to convey, but you're conveying it in a way that they're going to receive it and receive it well and be able to implement it. Because, and Katie, you probably know this, as well, because you talk to people throughout the world. And I've noticed that we've had conversations about this in the past. If you talk to certain people here in California, or at least where I'm at in California, the way I would talk to somebody that's in Belgium or in New York or somewhere else, it's a completely different thing. Like over here, I was like 100%. You got to be honest, but you kind of, it's like the velvet hammer. You got to be kind of soft with it, but still kind of drill in the point, because you can offend somebody, which will immediately put them into that point where they're just like, oh, and then they just shut down the whole entire thing because they don't want to, do anything. They'll do it, but they don't necessarily want to retain it. So it's always about kind of conveying the message for us, and that's the client experience is like the biggest thing for us, especially locally. Whereas if I go like in 2 weeks, I'll be in Memphis, and I'll be teaching a fairly large seminar there. I could be as blatantly honest as I want to and say things as whatever is black and white. Like we were having a conversation about dogs, and people will receive it well. So I mean, like that's like one of the harder parts is reading essentially what the clients want, and then being able to communicate with the clients, in a way that's productive for them, and also not going to give you like,
sure,
not going to bring up a whole bunch of shit for you guys. I mean, like, is that something that you guys experience or deal with? I know you're probably, Dustin, you got the crash course on it once you guys opened up over there.
Yeah, it was a crash course. No, I think you said it right. I think client experience, right? You want to make it fun. You want to make it informational. You want to push home, the hard truth of maybe where they're messing up and what they need to fix, because we all know that's usually what it comes down to, is to make sure that the client, the owner of that pet, can act the same way that I can in training that dog, because that's what has to be maintained going forward. And I think that's the hardest part of all of this: training the handler, training the owner, to make sure they maintain what I put into the dog. So it's client experience, but just making it informational and fun for them to do.
And then you can always be like KD to just like punch him in the mouth with his very like easy way of talking. He's very the term debonair about it. Like he smiles and smirks, but also tells them like, "Hey, you're fucking up." But then the way that they take it, they don't get offended by it.
Yep.
Well, the thing with pet dogs, when you get into the pet dog world, is you really learn quickly. This isn't about how you hold a leash, and it isn't about what you can do with a dog. What you can do with a dog is almost irrelevant outside of aggressive rehabs or, serious things where, no, I need this dog to do this. And that is that compartment. Outside of that, you're a human trainer. You are a teacher.
Oh, yeah.
And so many people get into dog training because they love dogs or they're good with dogs. Cool story. What happens when you give that dog back? What's that handoff session like? What's your supplementary educational program like? It isn't really about the dog anymore, because it doesn't mean shit what you can do with that dog. It's what that person who's going to spend the next 10, 15, 5 years with that animal. It's about how can you educate them. And that is a completely different skill set that a lot of dog trainers get slapped in the face. And it's like a gatekeeper right there. It's like, can you get past that and learn that you're going to have to learn how to talk to people? I run a mentorship program. We meet once a month. We had our meeting last night. It was 3.5 hours. And I have actual pet owner handlers in it, and I have dog trainers in it. The dog trainers are there to learn how to talk to people. And we work on stuff like that. It's like, all right, the handler asks a question. I find one of my trainers in the group, answer it. And I'm there to pressure them. And when the handler doesn't ask the right question, it's like, time out, now pretend they're me. And I will push them. Well, what do you mean? Why? That doesn't make sense. And a lot of them find themselves in the beginning like, well, I mean, you just grab the leash and like, what do you mean? Explain it. Huge skill set that you got to up that when you get into that pet world.
Oh, absolutely. I could not agree more. I think, like you said, a human trainer, you have to be that. Maybe a little, you're also a little bit of a therapist as well at times.
Oh, yes. Marriage counselor, family therapist, personal life coach.
Correct.
Dude, look at my Yelp. I got so many ones that said, "Oh, they saved my marriage." I'm like, well, don't know that. Don't have that on there. I don't want that.
Oh, but okay, I'm in.
I think that's like and it's so like do you do board and trains, Katie? You don't do board and trains. I think we've talked about this before, right?
Few and far between. If I do, it's to help somebody out, or it's like an extreme situation, or it's like Elmo, where it's like an extended board and train, and then I get stuck with the dog.
Then it's your dog. So we have like I was talking to one of my trainers today, one of my newer trainers, and he was like talking about like his dog, like the Shiba, and like he's done it like Shiba Inus in general. I mean, those are everyone knows. If you're watching this, people, you know that's my least favorite.
Wow, I would have to agree with that as well. I would have to agree.
Basenjis are worse,
dude. All the Basenjis I've met have been awesome. All the Shibas I've met have been like, because I used to help with a Shiba Inu rescue in the Bay Area. Every single one has either bitten me or bitten one of my trainers. Like, I think there's like one that I've, what's that freaking soccer player's name that, like a long time ago before that Christian kid that everyone that was all in love with, the Beckham kid. His dog's name was Beckham. So this dog was actually cool. It was like these people did meal prep for us and they're awesome. The dog was actually cool, but every other one complete assholes. So this dog has like been biting people, dog reactive, all this stuff. And our trainer Brandon actually got the reactivity down. Obedience was like great, is doing great. And you know, our thing is we want the dogs as close to being off leash ready to go home and start the transition lessons with the people. And we're going with all this stuff. And Brandon's like, man, he's like, I got all the reactivity done, but the dog's not motivated to do things. And I was just like, well, that's fine. I was like, because that's not going to be our not going to be our big issue. I was like, our big issue is the original behavior that they came in with. We've extinguished that behavior on our side. Now let's start with that building block and give it back to the handlers or the owners and have them start working on the stuff that you're doing with them. And, you know, that's something like, cause before I believe he was more like in the background doing the kennel stuff. And he was like talking to him now, but like, you know, a lot of it, like, you know, him being more involved and all my new guys being more involved is now you guys are up front, you know, doing the conversation, doing the talking, teaching the handlers. And like, that's what everyone's getting in. Like all my new guys, they're all getting like the crash course and like how to deal with, you know, people and being able to, especially the amount, I mean, cause each one of my guys gets 3 board and trains at a time, if not maybe 2 to 3, because we had a 21-day things. And everyone's like booked up. So, and it's like back to back. So everyone's like on pressure. So they're getting better at actually being able to communicate to the handlers, because that's how you get it done. Like, you know, when you send them home, like want to make sure, especially dogs with reactivity or, you know, bites and all those other things, as soon as they hand that leash back, you know, it's not necessarily the dog's behavior has been taken care of. Now it's about taking care of the handler's behavior. Yeah. And like, that's the part that, you know, my guys are starting to really understand more and more and more about and getting better at it. But you know, they also get kind of dragged through the dirt here a little bit with some of these COVID puppies that are coming in right now.
Well, the thing is, when you work on those human training skills, inevitably it absolutely goes right back to how you work with the dog. So, you know, what I've found in working with other trainers, especially trainers who are just really good with dogs naturally, there's a lot of things they do that they completely take for granted or they don't do deliberately, especially when we talk about relationships with a dog. You know, you get that person who just walks into a room and dogs behave differently or other humans behave differently. So there's things happening between them and the dog that they're not even cognizant of. It's because of who they are. Sure. Now you're having to work with the dog owner who isn't you, who doesn't have that. So you have to now learn to explain it. We'll learn what it is, then explain it. When you get to the point where you can fluently explain it to someone who doesn't understand it, that changes now when you go back with the next dog, because now you're cognizant of it. So it only enhances your ability with the dog when you become more aware of everything that's happening, because you're having to explain it to someone who doesn't get it.
Yeah, sure. 100% agree.
Yeah, that's like, there's a slogan around like our shop. It's like, stay aware. You know, that's basically always like, stay aware of your surroundings, what's going on. Like I'll walk around and like smack my guys, but like just like have them consistently just like be aware of what's happening. And like most of them are a lot more aware than before, but it also translates into what are you doing when the dog is biting you? What are you doing while you're handling a dog who's fairly reactive? Like what are your emotions that you're doing? Because a lot of what you're doing is what you're going to have to teach somebody else to do. You know, especially like Matt and Lee, you know, those guys, they help me with some of my apprentices when I'm booked up doing something like that. And I have something for, you know, my apprentices to watch. I'll be like, all right, go and like, you know, watch Matt and Lee do this because those guys have been with me the longest. And, you know, they'll go ahead and do that. Or now with like Brandon and Henry, like my other guys, I'll tell them like, hey, like I'll have my apprentices go watch, you know, Brandon and Henry do those things, because watching just this, and I'll pinpoint things for them to look at, like, all right, watch how Brandon holds the leash here. Watch how he, need lures here. Watch what his position is when he's talking to this person. Just watch the whole, like, him being the handler, and also how he teaches the other person to be a handler. Because there's a lot of different things, especially when it's in person and it's a live event, like, happening right then and there. Because, a lot of times, especially when you get dogs to do specific behaviors, because they can bounce from having someone who wants high level obedience, like, AKC obedience with the dog's all crazy, or a dog who wants to go out and murder like a child or something like that. It can be two different styles of handling within 30 minutes of each other, or even like within a minute of each other. Stuff can change really quickly. Yep. But it's always important to, kind of be aware of what movements are happening, what's going on around, how do you react when those dogs are reacting, and just kind of going from and, doing all that stuff and processing it and learning how to communicate it to the other person as well. Yep. Especially when it's their babies. Yep. It's their babies.
Dustin, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Why dogs? What's your story? What's your story with dogs?
Ooh, God, that's great. So how it started for me, when I joined the Marine Corps, I came in as a military police officer. That was going to be my MOS. I went through MP school. Through MP school, I was one of the selectees that was board to be a dog handler. Right? I had no idea. My class instructor came to me and said, "Hey, do you want to be a dog handler?" I said, "Well, shit, never thought about it, but yeah, it sounds kind of interesting." And this would have been in '99. And I said, "Yeah, I'll do it. Let me try to get it." So you had to write an essay, and then you had to go on a board. And of the 40 or 50 guys that went on the board, I think 16 of us got selected to go be dog handlers down in Lackland, and I was one of the 16 selected to go down there and be what they called the pipeline dog handler at the time. It was boot camp to your MOS school, which was a military police officer, and then going to Lackland Air Force Base and spending 3 months down there, becoming basically just a basic dog handler with dual capability, your apprehension and your detection capability. So after that, I went to Okinawa. I spent Okinawa for about a year working a narc dog. A lot of health and comfort inspections, flying out to ships, searching the ship coming in to Okinawa before they got there. It was at customs. We did a lot of customs and border stuff with the individuals on the island. So that, and then when I came to Miramar down in San Diego here, it was that transition period where 9/11 happened. And I was one of the guys that was fortunate enough to have an explosive detection dog that was trained in apprehension as well. So when the towers fell, I was one of the guys shortly after the towers fell to go out and search Ground Zero. They had the G8 summit going on. But I was tasked with going down to Ground Zero and searching Ground Zero for secondary devices that they thought could possibly be planted down there. They just didn't want the responders or the search and rescue individuals to get hit by an IED or somebody planting something down there and causing more devastation at Ground Zero. So that was one of my taskings. I think at that point I grew a love for my job in that moment. Shortly after coming back from Ground Zero, I got deployed to Saudi Arabia for an intel gathering, which only increased my drive to be a better dog handler. Came back from Saudi Arabia shortly after arriving back to the States. I got deployed to Afghanistan. I was there, spent about four months in Afghanistan, and then came back and separated from the Marine Corps. And from that point on, I knew that I was still going to be connected to dogs one way or another. And it hasn't stopped. My contracting life was PSD, but also a dog handling background position with a company called Blackwater way back in 2005. And then, basically after that, I spent 6 years overseas in Iraq. I would say 6 good years of my life spent in Iraq, doing that rotation of, 6 months there, a month home. And I did that for a long time, and it was great. And I think I got burned out on dogs for a little bit because you run dogs that long and you're in a high threat environment all the time. It can be really taxing on your mind. It was one of those things where I was like, okay, I just got to separate from the dogs for a while. And I did. So I ran on a low pro team. And I think I realized how bad I missed dogs because I ran a low pro team for about maybe a year in Baghdad, and realized how much I really wanted to get back to dogs. So in that moment, is when I made a career decision to say, all right, I'm going dogs, and that's going to be the career for the rest of my life because I have a passion for it. I have a drive for it. And I inherently just want to give back to the community of not only the military and law enforcement, but also pet dogs. So I haven't looked back, man. It's been good. And now with this transition from kind of a DOD position, right, as a federal employee, ramping this business up has been something that I've worked on, and myself and my fiance have worked on for the last year. And we're ready, man. I'm so excited for what the future holds for this business. For those individuals that get to come here and train on this facility, the sky's the limit, man. It really is, and I'm really excited about it. So that's kind of the long story of how I got to where I am now. Why dogs? That's absolute why dogs. No real history with dogs prior to coming into the Marine Corps. You know, everybody will tell you, oh, I trained so-and-so's dog when I was a kid, and my pet dog at home, I trained that dog. I didn't do that. I messed with my pet dog, and I messed up a bunch of things on my dog, you know, but I learned lessons from that dog, but it didn't really give me a drive to want to go and be a dog handler until I joined the Marine Corps and kind of got shoved. It almost fell in my lap, man. And I don't like, I wish it was a better story, but it really fell in my lap. And I haven't looked back.
I think that there is no better story. That, if anything, that makes it even more interesting that how things worked out for you, and how something that you didn't plan on doing ended up being what you're doing now and what you'll continue to do. And look at what's growing. No, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. It's been a fun road. It's been a hard lesson learned kind of road, but I think those are the best roads because I really have, I got a lot of knowledge back in here. On some really good ideas, you know, and you can talk about, law enforcement, military, and pet dogs, but I got good ideas for everything. I'm really excited for what the future holds.
Excellent.
Awesome. So you kind of touched on that a little bit on the last thing there, Dustin. And so we obviously we've all, Katie, you've talked about this in the past when it comes to protection dogs and experiencing, what we call with the, true violence and being involved in that. And like Dustin, obviously like stuff that, you guys have worked on and things that you guys are prepared for. And just in the dog world in general, I mean, we have Canine Street League coming up. You guys run a PSA club over there. Mm-hmm. And then, there's always like the bickering back and forth between dogs who are involved in, real dogs versus sport dogs and all these other, the shit that happens with it. But, the thing that and this is something that I stress with my guys and I stress with, the handlers that I work with or that I work with in general is that we focus so much on fundamental stuff. And, we post a lot of the fundamental work of marking, behaviors and everything. Because, we're heavily ingrained in that. But a lot of the reason why we focus so much on, fundamentals is because when shit hits the fan, that when shit's going haywire, you have to be able to drill those things because it comes muscle memory for yourself and for the dogs.
Absolutely.
And especially when it comes to high stress situations. I mean, think about, a reference I use is when you get pulled over by the cops, no matter what, if you're doing something right, you're doing something wrong, the very minimal of it, you're just fuck. And then you get a little bit of heart palpitations. And then all of a sudden, then you get into, let's say you get into a fight, what's happening in the fight? The ability to stay clear within a fight, takes training, takes, reps, takes time to understand what's happening, what's going on.
Beer.
Beer.
the courage, the liquid courage.
I always wondered what would happen if I was able to drink before any of my other fights. I was wondering what would actually what would transpire from that, because I've been drunk and gone to bar fights and that didn't really work out for the other people. But in my professional career, what would have happened? But in general, this joking aside, there's a specific amount of clarity that happens when you experience certain levels of violence. And just as an individual, what happens to you right then and there when it's happening, but also the after effects of it as well. Then you throw in, a dog. You throw in a dog on a bite. A dog, whether they're defending you, whether you're doing an extraction, whatever is happening, dealing with that level of stress and that act of the basically the violence that happens in those things. What's happening? What would you? For us, I drill in fundamentals. That's the main thing. Showing the experience, making sure the dog understands it, making sure the handler knows how to help. What happens during the bite, what happens after the bite, what's in the fight, all those different things, and what that does mentally. And we talked about this before, but what that does mentally, how mentally prepared the handler has to be, what that does, what they can expect, during, after, and also how can they prepare their dog on it. So I kind of wanted to hear both your guys's, I guess, perspectives on that. So go ahead, Dustin. I'll start with you first.
Cool. No, I think you definitely hit the nail on the head, man. I love developing dogs and layering in some form of defense in there. As long as I can kind of hold off on that, I will. But layering in, building a confident dog fundamentals, really focusing on grips and possession and digging in nice and deep and marking those behaviors. I laugh sometimes, when people say, well, look at this defensive dog, look at it. Does that dog hold up when there's variables thrown at it? Because in a very controlled environment, it looks really good. So one thing that I always say to my people is, do you want a hot-headed fighter that is just throwing haymakers and blind to the world and just looking aggressive? Or do you want that cool, calm, collected fighter that's just processing everything, analyzing everything, and then handling business in a very clear, confident way? I love that style of fighter. I love that style of dog. I really breed calmness in my dogs. I will ramp up as much stim as I need to, but ultimately I want that dog to be calm and clear-headed. And I think with going through a bunch of scenarios and always throwing different things at the dogs, I think everything comes back to the fundamentals on what you taught that dog at a very early age. And as long as you bring that up the right way, I think you build a really nice, confident dog. Start phasing away equipment when you start talking about real scenarios. A lot of muzzle engagements. I'm heavy on muzzle engagements to get a good fighting dog, a good human fighting dog, but still a level of clear-headed in the dog. I guess that's the best thing. I love a clear-headed animal.
Nice. And then, so you talked about like building up, and I do a really similar system, because I was like, the way I kind of say it's like pray is play. So,
Yep.
For the dog, so it's clear. So like I'll use a reference of like fighters again. It's like teaching someone how to hit mitts, how to throw a jab properly, how to throw a cross properly, how to use the punches. And then, you start, because there's always that saying, and I think people misinterpret it, is like, train how you fight, or fight how you train, or train how you fight, or something like that. Like, well,
Yep.
You're not sparring 100% every single day if you're a fighter. Like, you're not, that's it. These aren't happening. You're not going to get all these concussions. You're going to use your mitts. You're going to hit the bag. You're going to have someone showing you your forms this way. Even if you're shadow boxing or whatever, you're looking in a mirror, you're seeing what you're doing, and you're fixing the technical problems. So applying that to, dog training, I feel is very important, because at that level of stress, once you step into the ring, or once, something happens, the muscle memory has already been tuned in, and the way that's been introduced is through almost like a positive state. Whereas if you, and this is something I deal with all the time, especially when I go down to the South, is that people stack dogs, like, because they're like, oh, my dog needs to bite, so I need to make sure it's real. So to put dogs on the fence table, all of a sudden just start whipping, and the dog's never had a bite in its life, and next thing you know, the dog's like, and it's fear biting and all this other shit. So that a lot of times people believe in that stuff. But I feel like when you develop a dog in that simple play as prey, or like, prey type of, fundamental way of learning, to where they're understanding it, it does prepare them for when, the actual shit happens. And then that's also another part too, is that what, like on the handler side, as far as that, how would you prepare your handler for, let's say, a personal protection dog they're going to get roughed up, all these things happening? Like, what do you convey to the handler with that?
Yeah. So, going through and personal protection dogs, first of all, are that's a responsibility in and of itself, right? You're training a dog to protect you in a situation that deems necessary. So handlers making decisions on things like that, right? I want a handler to understand the consequences of utilizing that dog in a situation. But more importantly, it is training. It definitely comes down to the handler. But if you can always keep the handler on their toes and keep them kind of guessing on what's coming up, maybe a surprise scenario, maybe they don't know what's going to happen. Hey, I want to see reaction time. I want to see your call, your decision-making skills in what's going to come up next. Okay. And we run through a bunch of scenarios like that. I think handler training, like it definitely goes back to pet dogs. Handler training is probably the biggest thing that I have to concern myself with, is making sure handlers and owners of dogs are trained properly to handle the dog, to train the dog, whatever it is, they're trained properly.
KD. What is your perspective?
I'm trying to pick which rabbit hole to go down because I got like 4 of them floating in my head right now. I'll try to focus on something that I haven't said 500,000 times already, right?
That's a hard one for KD. He's
like, oh yeah.
You got to work the dog in front of you.
Yeah.
And this is where I see a lot of people getting kind of stuck because there are universal principles. If you understand universal principles of behavior, you can teach a dog to do anything. Whether we're talking about bite work, whether we're talking detection, or getting me a fucking beer out of the goddamn fridge. They all follow the same principles. Now you bring it into bite work. All right, you got a puppy. Well, who is that puppy? What's the genetics on that dog? Because while the principles are there that you can follow, you have to look at, like, what type of training are you even doing? Are you working with government-issued dogs that people have spent, or the government, the people with taxes have spent $30,000 on a breed dog, and this dog has been bred to look at fighting a certain way. So, like, to just focus on, like what Dustin was saying, like the haymaker, the crazy fighter versus calm, cool, and collected. Well, it's completely relevant to a lot of these debates, and most of these debates, the only reason why they're debates is because people only know half of what they should know. Because if they knew all of it, they wouldn't be fucking arguing. They'd be exchanging ideas.
Yeah.
The dog you have in front of you is going to tell you a lot about what direction you're taking it in training, because not to go too deep down into the whole, is fight drive even real? Like, that's a lovely wormhole, because for years, when people first get into bite work, it's there's 3 drives. There's prey drive, defense drive, and fight drive. There's wolf versus rabbit, wolf versus wolf, and wolf versus bear. I get it, but a dog isn't that simple. It isn't that cookie cutter. So when you're getting into bringing the dog to prepare a dog for real fighting, real fear, there are elements of fear involved. Now, what dog you're working determines, can you just work him and build all his technique and prey? And so when he gets in there, you're not even worried about having in training to, like, put him in fight drive, because that fucking dog has an erection already, because that's who he is. He wants to fight. You taught him the techniques. You built him up in prey so he could think clearer, so he could learn how to throw that punch, he could learn that takedown properly. But his genetics are taking over, along with proper decoying, proper training to teach him how to use his violent abilities to solve a potential problem. But not all dogs are fucking bred that way. To a degree, those are unicorns. Those dogs, when they get into a fight, you don't have to teach them how to think. They're already thinking that way because of who they are. That's why the government pays a sick amount of money to find those unicorns from all over the world. So that dog can get into a real life violent interaction, do what needs to be done, get in a helicopter with a team of guys who were overdosing on adrenaline, then get dumped in a fucking foxhole on top of them and not hurt any of them, then go look for fucking mines for an 8 hours in 105, 115 degree weather. Then, like that's not all people, not all police departments, civilians alone have access to that type of genetics. Yep. So while you got to hold on to your principles of how to increase behavior, how to teach the bite you want, how to teach the behavior you want, you now have to work the dog in front of you, and he might need different types of pressure applied at different times, because he ain't walking into that fight like, I get to go today. He might have some other issues you got to work him through based on who he is genetically and what context that handler is going to put him in.
Yep.
That's a good point too. I mean, like, because this is basically like the world that we kind of live in over here, is that you don't get, like, a lot of the clients that walk through the door, you don't get the genetic profile, right? You're not like, oh, well, you're this line, so I know you're probably going to have more genetic dispositions to do this or anything like that. It's just like, well,
the unknown.
Here's my Dogo or GSD. I got him from, like, Craigslist. I want to see if he does this. So, like, just analyzing, and Katie, you said it perfectly. also, Katie, this is probably your most consistent, longest you've gone without mentioning an erection. And Drinks and Dogs episode. So we've gotten roughly 45 minutes, and then we've got one erection off you.
Or proctology analogies. You know, I love those.
Yeah. But I mean, a lot of it is, it is working the dog. You can always kind of have the idea behind it. But, I have a dog that I've been working for 2.5 years. The dog's name's Rocky, and they're super dedicated handlers. But his initial like the way that I was able to like get him to actually spark was, I'd tell the lady like back him up a little bit, hold him on to like the harness, back him up. And I kind of approached and he barked at me, which gave him a little bit of a defensive pressure, and I ran away. And then after that, the dog was just like, he's like, oh shit, like I got a little bit of power to me. Like, so then he just started building over the time. And it's like, for them, it's more about, they like it because it makes him happy. Like he's having a good time doing it. He's proficient for what he's doing, but like they've just been working on it for so long just because there's, it's a good time for them.
Sure.
But I mean, I think like, just working the dog that's in front of you is really important. And it's funny that you talk about, so Kitty, you brought up the fight drive thing. That's funny that you talked that out, because a lot of people always ask, like they always talk about the prey and defense. And because I asked about like, the long fights I do with the dogs that I work. And a lot of it is like, I work them for, I do like high intensity interval training when we're fighting, the dogs, I'll put them on their backs. I'll put them in hard positions. I'll flank them. I'll do the things I need to do. But I always like release when the counter is, so the dog learns to like adequately fight per se.
Sure. Or
or even when they're tired, when the dogs are tired, a lot of it does, and I believe it's taught, but I think a lot of it comes in. I believe most of it is certain things that are genetically they possess. It's them as the dog, just as we as people have specific things that help us get through hard shit. When you just gotta, turn the brain off and like, I'm doing this, like this is what I gotta do, and you focus and it gets you through some of the gnarly things. I think that's a lot of dogs possess those things internally, which is like, Kitty, you referenced like the unicorns. Like what happens when it's minute 6 on, on the bite, you're screaming, yelling, or like when I just, that's that fucking dog from Amsterdam, bro. I'm telling you, dude. Aaron just walked out. You motherfucker. The PH2 dog whines like a little bitch. But I'll put a dog like Ozzy. I'll lift him up, I'll flank him, put him up on the fence, and then put him on his back at 6 minutes of us just fighting. Yeah. And he'll counter his way through. Once he gets up, he'll learn how to counter back even harder. And he's learned how to like fight through all those things. So I always, when people ask me about fight drive, I just tell them it's like, okay, well, once the dog is working in prey, defense, it's about how they fight. For me, like when I'm trying to do my PC definition of everything, it's like, it's what they do in the fight. Are they in the fight? Like they want to be in the fight? Like they want let's fucking keep going? Or are they like just trying to end the fight? Are they trying to stop it?
I call it perseverance. Absolute perseverance. Yeah, that's what I use a lot. Perseverance.
Yep.
Okay, do you want it to end or do you want to win? Those are two very different things that I don't think. I mean, that's what the dog brings to you when it shows up for training for the first time. Is buried deep inside of it. It's either a dog that's going to fight to want it to end, or it's going to do it because there's a challenge being posed, and that dog has to win every challenge. And that's a character. I believe that's a character trait.
Yes. I believe so too.
I agree.
I mean, that's just like, we talked to Rampage, a few episodes ago, and a lot of like the conversations I've had with him and like just talking to other fighters that that we've talked to, it's like, people who are getting in the ring, why are you getting in that ring? Like what is the motivation behind it? When shit's getting tough, minute 4, like the 3rd round, and you get your ass whooped, like what keeps you going into the next one? Like all those other things. And, I do believe that is a character trait, just like in people, what makes people, persevere through some of the tougher times. And, I feel like you can train it into a dog, but as far as getting the absolute, like, for example, like the dog Ozzy we have, he's been working with me since this whole entire thing. Will he fight through pretty much anything? Yeah. I mean, that's his personality. Would he probably be the same way if he wasn't in the household that we're in? Yeah, who knows? But sure. Like, another dog that's, from the same litter of his things, like the personalities aren't necessarily there. And it even goes deep down to like when people talk about cloning, dogs, and I think I was talking to Joe from Advanced Canine Systems, or no, it wasn't him, it was somebody else. I was Joe. He's like, they do possess similar, traits that the other dogs, but the character is different. So like that, like, it's not like they have certain things that they possess that are similar, but the characters, the character inside the dog is different than, than the other dogs, which, for me, that's a whole other topic of stuff. But for me, that was really, really interesting, because even like the dogs that we have, because we usually keep all of our litters private, and like they all kind of stay with us or around the area we sell them off. But even then, like genetically, same blood, same genetic profile, personality wise, very, very different, or character wise, very different.
Yeah.
Which is why I have a tough time understanding how people who do not have any real experience with some type of violence to some degree, because there's varying degrees, and I sit amongst this panel with probably the least amount of experience in it, but enough to know what it is. I don't understand how people who don't have that experience can teach a dog to do that very same thing, until you've been put in those positions to where you had to ask yourself some really fucking uncomfortable questions in split seconds. If you don't know what that feels like and how you got through it, or how someone helped you get through it, or someone taught you to get through it, man, I'm really curious to know how you're able to teach a dog to.
Yeah, I agree. Yep. I mean, especially when it, shit gets dark, like that's, something that, that's something I definitely agree. That's why, I mean, like for me, like I used to entertain a lot of questions like online from like talking about personal protection and, all these other things. I used to kind of like talk about it, and now I'm just like, I'll give like the thumbs up emoji. I just don't even like respond to it. I'm just like, I don't really want to fucking write this for the 1,000th time or like do a live about it. It's just like, I just come and train. Like, we'll talk about it when you're over here.
Yeah. Awesome. It's great because, for the last 21 years, I've been pretty closed off to like, I mean, it's all been military stuff. So I haven't done interviews like that or anything like the show that we're on now. So I'm opening myself up to more questions. It's just, and Instagram, social media is crazy because people can ask you anything on social media. And it's off the wall questions sometimes. You just got to deal with it.
Oh, and if you do Q&As, I will absolutely troll the shit out of you.
I haven't done that yet.
Those are fun. That's where it gets really interesting. You got 15
because of KD too. That's probably how me and Katie started like talking in the first part. I think that was how we started communicating. Katie was like trying to troll me.
That's funny.
Maybe not.
Dude, that's the beauty of social media. That's why I like watching Katie's stuff, because Katie is in my opinion, he's probably one of the best. Or what would you say? You're not a troll. You're like you're anti-trolling. Like you put them on blast and like heavy, or like.
Oh, I love it. I encourage, like when I do my Q&As. Yeah. I will put it in the Q&A. Trolling encouraged. Fucking bring it, and ask me anything. Doesn't even have to be dog related. So
it's probably one of the only Q&As that I'll actively watch. Like I'll let like my stories just roll like for algorithm stuff. But with Katie, if I know Katie's on, I'm like, oh fuck, I gotta listen to what Katie says, because he's either gonna be having a cowboy hat on, talking about his mustache or some random stuff, or he'll just be going off on like someone's retarded question.
Gotta have fun with it.
Oh yeah, I love it. I love it. All right, so we got a few minutes here. Let's talk about Street League. So, Dustin, you showed me your awesome property. I was down there, 3 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago? KD, we're gonna have some fun there, buddy. It's quite the adventure over there.
Pictures, and I was like, ooh, this looks pretty fucking rad.
Oh yeah. I was even thinking I would like the whole flight home, because I was all right. We were up from the night before, and I was just like driving or going home. And I'm like thinking like, all right, cool. After we started checking out those kill houses, I'm like, all right, we'll do a night trial. We'll do it for like the ones or something. Do like no light, low light stuff. Like add those into it. Like I was literally just writing down new stuff for like the handbook based on like your guys' like property for 1s and 2s. I was like, shit. There's all these cool things that can happen.
Holy shit. I mean, really, honestly, the sky's the limit. That thing's that place, like those 2 houses are like haunted houses, dude. Wild shit happening in there.
Oh yeah, no, it's
You set up one up like a rave.
Oh god.
People come out with glow sticks, and the dog's got.
You laugh, but any day of the weekend or any weekend, any random weekend, I could probably not run down there and find a rave going on where some of this stuff's going down. It's wild.
Well, we went down there with that mattress that keeps mysteriously reappearing.
And I drag that mattress out probably once a month, and it finds its way back into this 20,000 square foot cement floor barn. And I'm like, I don't even want to touch it, or I don't want to look at it. When I walk in, I just ignore it. It just stays there now.
That's where we're gonna be at, Katie.
Cool.
The mattress will reappear. So that place, the place you're talking about, that graffiti barn, that's one of the. I mean, that's where we'll be at for Street League, but that's for people who are watching this. It's a very small portion of the North County actual property,
Sure.
As far as what you guys have there, because you guys have that whole rock face, the shooting range, the freaking rappelling tower, you have all those like amazing things over there.
Zip line, we got the zip line.
Oh, the zip line.
Yeah, we got the zip line. We got a cool ass bite barn, the obstacle course that is made for humans and dogs alike. If the dog does it, you do it. That's my motto. If the dog has to complete it, you need to complete it. So really, really cool stuff with that. All the structures, we got a few structures that we use for building search. The numerous acres for area search and tracking. I mean, honestly, man, it's just some wild times out here.
All of the fun. All right, so they're hitting me up to wrap it up. All right, Katie, what do you got going on here, buddy? What's going on?
What am I doing? I'm closing enrollment for the blueprint next week. I'm taking 2 months of renovations. So it's not going to be less busy. It's just I'm not going to be taking in new clients for 2 months, and I'm going back into the blueprint. And what I do is I review all the coaching calls and look at what any consistent issues, and then I go back in and make new lessons and rebuild things just to make it bigger, better, stronger, more awesome than it already is. So, and plus it allows me some time to not have so many calls because I'm going to be on airplanes a lot in the summer. So all over. I'm trying to figure out if I can get to Memphis.
Ooh, that's the fun.
Not by. So we'll see.
There's gonna be some people that do this Memphis seminar, or at least the freaking cert, man. Like that thing is there's a lot of guys coming out for that one just throughout the country. It's gonna be pretty interesting. It's much different than the West Coast one, because the West Coast one was predominantly people from the west side of everything, but now there's like people throughout the freaking country coming out for this one. So it'll be interesting to see how, if anyone's watching this is going to be there for the Street League certification, prepare to have your asses handed to you on Sunday, because we're going to put that shit. We're going to put you guys in some very dark places.
I need you to shoot me details, dates, and places and stuff.
Yeah, I'll shoot you a text right after this.
Yeah.
Awesome. And so the cool thing about, for people who maybe aren't following KD, they're following this. Cool thing about KD's Blueprint program is that it is not a finished program. That the program is continuously renovated, continuously getting better and better, which I'm sure even some of your past clients of the Blueprint even getting now, come back in for training as well. So make sure you guys check that out. Check that over at KD's. And then Dustin, before I get done, do all the closing stuff I have to do for the PCU stuff, how can people find you? What's going on over that North County, and the best contact way and everything?
Yeah, North County Canine is our Instagram. NorthCountyCanine.com is our website. You can look us up that way. Find us on Instagram. We're all over Instagram right now. That puppy obstacle course video that went viral.
Oh yeah,
really cool course. So take a look at that. And we're doing upgrades to that course now. So I'm doing some wild stuff. I'm going to really make it a cool puppy course. And we got the news. We got Fox 5 News out on the 9th of June to do a big piece on the entire property. The obstacle course is obviously a big target for them. But yeah, good things, all around good things, that obstacle course. So pay attention to that and you'll see some good things.
And you'll be doing Q&As on your Instagram now soon. So
hey, you mark my words, in the next week I will do a Q&A and open myself up to any question.
Awesome. All right, guess so. Obviously, you can follow Katie at Katie Matthews on Instagrams and on all social media platforms, right, Katie?
Yeah, I'm easy to find.
Dustin Wynn on Instagram, North County on Instagram, and then you guys have Facebook and everything too?
Yes.
Awesome. Make sure you guys follow them. And obviously for us, it's Primal Canine, PCU, and Street League in September. we will all be together in person. So the week probably before, so we'll be talking about that as well. And then for everybody else, this is available. You know, if you're not catching it live, it's completely fine. You can always use that link. It'll also be on our YouTube. And then speaking of our YouTube page, the actual first episode of the Dying to Live series is uploaded now. So go check that out. And yeah, guys, thank you guys for being on. Cheers.
Cheers.
Guys.
I'm out of coffee, but thank you.
Thanks for being on, guys. And then I'll catch you guys in the green room here.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Get us off, G.
While he's pushing all the buttons,
Right.
This is when all the good stuff comes in, because like people are like, "Ooh, maybe they don't know they're still on," and they'll say something. We're not juicy enough when we know you're watching, and we get the fuck out of here. It doesn't get any better than this.
Oh God. She's like, I was taking a crap.
I'll help you. Bye.
Yep.